So this week on the Setty Report, we're going to be discussing the mainstream media claim that's been going on for the last week or so with regards to the 99% of deaths that we're seeing with COVID right now in the US are all from the unvaccinated. Now, these numbers sound scary. They sound like, oh my gosh, like it's clear the vaccine is working. But there's some issues with these numbers and with some of the data and some of the sourcing. And we're going to dive through that here with Madhava as we unpack this Setty Report. Madhava, take it away.
Great to be here with you, Joe, and thank you all for tuning in. And as a reflection on what we're doing here, like I'm not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe. I'm here to offer a way to explain to people that may disagree with you why they could be misled. So in order to do that, you have to look, as I keep saying, more deeply. And so please stay with us, stay with me here, and we're going to dive deep into these numbers and hopefully explain it in a way that you'll understand and offer you a way to explain it to others, because that's the way to make this movement towards clarity happen. We have to be able to talk to each other in educated ways. So, Joe, you brought up something, and the point of this whole Setty report is to look at this claim that 99% of the people dying are the unvaccinated. And where did this come from? And if you go back and look at media for the last 3 or 4 weeks, it came from an article published by the Associated Press. And what we see here is that the title of the piece is "Nearly all COVID deaths in the United States are now among the unvaccinated." And that is a startling claim because not only are they saying nearly all COVID deaths, they actually quote numbers that are between 96 and 99% of the deaths are in the unvaccinated people. Where is the data? That should be the very, very first question we ask. And the reason why I bring that up is that I query the CDC database regularly to find that statistic somewhere. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The CDC is not publishing the vaccination status of the people who are dying. They don't. I can't find it anywhere. Instead, what they do say is, and state, are in each jurisdiction how many people are dying and how many people are vaccinated. That's not the same thing as telling us which people are dying. So we're forced to make correlations and make assumptions. So that's where I'd like to begin. An associated analysis of available government data from May shows that breakthrough infections in fully vaccinated people accounted for fewer than 1,200 of more than 107,000 COVID hospitalizations. The AP analyzed figures provided by the CDC. The CDC itself has not estimated what percentage of hospitalizations and deaths are in fully vaccinated people, citing limitations in the data. What are we supposed to make of that? They're saying it's coming from the CDC, yet the CDC themselves saying that they can't make that estimation. They have not estimated the percentage of hospitalizations and deaths. So what are we supposed to say about that? I mean, seriously, they're saying that it's from the CDC, but the CDC doesn't have complete data. So I hope we can understand that that is a peculiarly damning statement that they're admitting right from the beginning. The CDC doesn't know, or they're not saying. When the CDC or when the Associated Press says that 99% of the people who are dying are unvaccinated, and to put that into context, if we look at the Pfizer vaccine trial and we look at the number of serious COVID infections that arose in that trial, of the 40,000 participants, roughly 20,000 got vaccinated with the vaccine and 20,000 got the placebo. How many deaths occurred? The answer is 0. So in that brief period, nobody died of COVID. How many people were seriously injured? Well, that is a semantic issue, but if we talk about their definition, which is serious COVID, does everyone know how many people got serious COVID in that vaccine trial? 10 people. And of those 10, 9 people got the placebo. In this small group of people, there were 9 times as many people getting serious COVID that got the placebo. Now we're forced to deal with the statement that 99% of people are dying. 99% of the people who are dying are unvaccinated. So if we just cursorily examine those numbers and we say, well, look, 99% versus 90%, that's only a 9% difference. That's not it at all, okay? Because what it's telling us, and let's pay attention to what's happening in our mind. When we hear that 99% of the people who are dying or getting hospitalized are unvaccinated, that means that if you compare the number of people getting sick, you have a 99 times more chance of getting really severe COVID if you're unvaccinated. And you compare that to what came out of the trials, which was 90%, 9 out of 10. So in that situation, with the 90%, the vaccine manufacturers were stating that, you have a 9 times less chance of getting severe COVID versus now a 99 times less chance, right? That is a huge, huge difference in terms of vaccine efficacy. A factor of, you're basically saying that it's 11 times better than we had anticipated. Claiming a 90% efficacy rate for a vaccine is in itself a pretty amazing vaccine. And now they're saying, based on this statement coming from the Associated Press and apparently from the CDC, it's 10 or 11 times better than that. That's why I believe that it cannot be true. And so how do we prove that? And to be very, very frank, it's not easy to prove that they're wrong. And the reason why it's not easy to prove that they're wrong is that the CDC is not making their data publicly available. And by data, I am talking about give us the vaccination status of those who are dying or getting infected. That is not being given anywhere. Now I'd like to put up a plot of what we do have available to us from the CDC. So there are two lines here on this plot. One is the blue line, and that represents a collection of the deaths per capita, which means per 100,000 people, in states that are in the top 50% of vaccinated states. The yellow line is in the lower half of vaccination compliance. You can see there's about a 0.04 death difference per 100,000 people per day. In other words, if you vaccinate 2.5 million people, you will save 1 death per day. That's what that number or that difference in values are as of the end of June. Now, the more important perspective is to look at the trend over the last 8 months or so. They're basically mirroring each other, right? It doesn't matter like what part of the year where deaths and infection rates were very high, or now in the summer where things are significantly lower. They're basically mirroring each other. And there are times, of course, where the under-vaccinated states are doing better than the vaccinated states. And now they keep flip-flopping. But, again, like I'm being fully forthright here and forthcoming, is that we don't know what the difference is in terms of vaccination rates between these two groups of states. But this is what we're forced to do because the CDC is not telling us who is dying and who is getting sick based on their vaccination status. We're just looking at trends. But the trends indicate that it doesn't really matter what the vaccination rate is in your state. You're pretty much doing the same thing as other states.
Right.
So that's why this entire statement is really hard for me, at least, to accept as an objective observer of what's being said. Let's go now to a piece that ABC put out. The title of the piece is Statistics Show the Stark Risks of Not Getting Vaccinated Against COVID-19. In Louisiana, 97% of the state's COVID-19 cases and deaths since February have been in unvaccinated people, says the governor. Between February and July, unvaccinated people in Louisiana were 20 times more likely to become infected with COVID-19, according to the state health department. So I went and looked at the statement from the state health department. Nowhere do they give us any data. They're just saying that, the governor is saying that, he's calling on all Louisianans to take advantage of the vaccine. And I scoured this piece to find out where they're making these claims about 99% protection of by the vaccine. And the only place where that number is mentioned is the last paragraph under facts about the Delta variant. And they make this statement. The CDC says 99.2% of all COVID deaths are in unvaccinated people. So, do you see what's happening here? The ABC is saying that the CDC is saying something, and in order to back that up, they refer us to the state of Louisiana, for example, from the Department of Public Health in that state. And if you look at their statement, they're not saying anything about Louisiana. They're saying something that the CDC said. So we have this circular, I say it's true because this person says it's true, and this person, it must be true because this person says it's true. And, this goes back to, I'm not sure who said it, but, you state something over and over again, it eventually becomes fact. So we have to find out what is the source of this information, and we don't have a source. There is none. And then finally, this is from the Denver Post. More than 96% of Colorado's COVID hospitalizations deaths in first half of 2021 were among the unvaccinated. I went to the Department of Health in Colorado, their website. I didn't go to Denver, to look at their data. And just like the CDC, they do not tell us the status of people who are dying or being hospitalized. Just like the CDC, they're merely giving us vaccination rates, and they're telling us about what's happening with the population in terms of who's getting, how many hospitalizations are occurring, okay? There is no direct correlation or connection between the people who are getting hospitalized and their vaccination status. But they say something a little more specific. They said that these are occurring in the first half of 2021. Now, here's where we have to look, as I say, more closely. They're using a 6-month window to make this comparison, right? And here's what's very interesting, is that in this, saying that this happened in the first 6 months, that 96% of deaths are occurring in the unvaccinated, if they said it's happening today, that's a much, much different statement than saying that it's happened over the last 6 months. Why is that? Well, it's because right now, if you look at Colorado's data, about 50% of the people are fully vaccinated. So that is a very, very strong claim about the vaccine's efficacy. If you have half the population that is unvaccinated and half that are vaccinated, and 96% of the people who are getting sick are in the unvaccinated group, that's a powerful statement about the vaccine's efficacy, because you have equal sizes of groups, and one side is getting sick and one side isn't, for the most part. Good statement. But in order to examine the statement that over 6 months that statement holds, you have to look at how many people were getting sick when no one was vaccinated, and how many people are getting sick now, and they group it all together. So what I'd like to show you now is, first of all, a plot of how many people were dying in Colorado over the last 6 months. This is the period that they want us to examine between January 1st and June 30th. This is data directly from the Colorado's Department of Public Health. And what we're seeing here is a bar graph, all in blue, between January 1st and June 30th. And this is the number of deaths per week. What do we see? Well, it's pretty clear that most of the deaths were occurring in the beginning of the year. Why is this important? Well, now let us look at how vaccinations were being doled out throughout the year in Colorado. Look what we see here. This is the next graph, another bar chart, and the y-axis is the percentage of people in Colorado that are fully vaccinated. You look at the beginning of the year, almost no one was fully vaccinated. Why? It's because the vaccine program in the United States rolled out, I believe, on December 14th of 2020, and it takes 4 weeks at least to be fully vaccinated. So this is accurate data. In January, almost no one was fully vaccinated. Even in February, we're looking at less than 9%. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we're comparing two very different sized groups, because in the beginning of the year, most people were not fully vaccinated, yet that's where all the deaths were occurring. So it is not a fair comparison, or at least it's not a accurate understanding to say, oh my gosh, 96% of the people are dying. 96% of the people who are dying are unvaccinated. No. Because based on this two groups of data, in general, most of the people throughout this period of time remained unvaccinated, especially when deaths were very high. And it's not so hard to calculate that if the vaccine itself had no effect, none whatsoever, on the risk of getting of dying, we would expect that 83.5% of the deaths should have occurred in the unvaccinated. Why? Because most of that time, most people were unvaccinated. Based upon that number, we can say the following. I'm not going to go through the math, but it's a very simple calculation. All you need to have is a vaccine efficacy in terms of preventing death of about 5.5 times. So a 5.5 times risk reduction in death from the vaccine. If the vaccine could do that, then Colorado's statement about this 96% unvaccinated death rate would hold true. And my guess is that's what's happening. They're not telling us exactly who is dying, but if we were to assume a vaccine efficacy of 5.5 times, this statement would hold true. And I believe that's what's going on. And the reason why that is so very important, okay, because this has to do with our interpretation of these headlines, is that when we are told that 96.1% of people that die are unvaccinated, we immediately go to, wow, the vaccine must be amazing, because there's about 33 times more people, or 33 times less risk of dying if you get vaccinated.
Yeah, like what you're saying is essentially the suggestion when they say 99%, they're saying that it's basically like, almost 100% that if you're not vaccinated right now, those are the only people who are going to be dying. Whereas in reality, what you're saying is that the people who are vaccinated have a 5% or 5 times less risk of dying than those that are unvaccinated.
Exactly. You said it exactly accurately. If 99% of the people who are dying are unvaccinated, the safety that the vaccine gives you is 99 times. You have a 99 times less risk of dying. But in fact, this claim from Colorado can be explained by only a 5.5 times factor of protection. So this is why this, unpacking the data is so important, because most people walk away from the headline saying, geez, it's like, it's a no-brainer. You got to get vaccinated. But that's not it at all. It's only a 5.5 times risk reduction, which is good, but it's not anywhere near a 99 times risk reduction, which is what we need to consider when we decide whether or not we're going to get vaccinated. What is the risk of not getting vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
And it's being completely distorted by these headlines.
And I think what's interesting about that too is the fact that, we keep hearing, the CDC said this, the CDC said this, the CDC said this. Everybody went and published articles about it. Became the headlines that everybody's hearing about. I mean, we're seeing an increase in overall media discussing that, the unvaccinated are the problem right now. Yet when we actually look at the data, when we actually look at what the CDC has made available, they don't even have any clear data that leads to the statements that they're making. At this point in time, they're literally just statements that they're making without the proper data behind them. So that's another piece to this that I think is important.
If our authorities were truly interested in decreasing vaccine hesitancy, to get people to get the jab, why won't they tell us the data? Why won't they show us the data? Right? That would be so easy on the CDC website, on the CDC databases. If they gave us the vaccine status of those who are dying so we could see it, we would probably get in line and say, oh gosh, I believe, even if you do, like, obviously some of us don't even believe the CDC and their data, but if you were looking at it objectively and say, look, I trust the data, I want to be scientifically oriented, I'm going to trust the data, go with the CDC, and they showed you that, then it would be reasonable to get the jab. But why won't they show us the data? That would be the greatest argument on their from their side, is just give us the numbers and then we'll get in line. But instead we have to make these suppositions and correlations and guesses. Instead of showing us the data, they instead are just condemning all of us who remain hesitant as being irresponsible and unscientific. No, we're actually being the scientific ones in this, because we're actually, asking for the numbers.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's all. I mean, this is another interesting one as we lead into a, what seems like a culture now of sort of just blaming everything that's going on with COVID on unvaccinated people, which is obviously an issue for a number of reasons. But thanks again for a deep and detailed Setty report here, Madhava, and look forward to the next one.
Great to be here with you, Joe, and stay sharp, everybody.